Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting. Welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live streaming interview series, where leading new thought teachers, speakers, and authors share the intimate stories behind the 10 best spiritual books that inspired them the most on their spiritual journey. From well-known classics to hidden gems you might never have heard of, the No BS Spiritual Book Club saves you time and money by sharing reliable recommendations from those who've walked the path before you. The No BS Spiritual Book Club, the only No BS guide to the best spiritual books to inspire your own journey of self-discovery. Here's your host, founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, Sandy Sedgbeer.
Hello and welcome. Joining me this week is author, radio host, inspirational coach, speaker, and business elevation consultant, Chris Cooper, whose leadership and spiritual adventures have taken him across the globe, learning about true leadership from the Masai in Kenya to the largest slum in Africa to the whirling dervishes in Turkey, who taught him about Rumi. And Chris has been sharing his wisdom and that of a variety of fascinating guests on his Business Elevation show on Voice America since 2011. Chris is the co-author of the book, The Power to Get Things Done, whether you like it or not, published by Penguin Random House, and founder of, what is it you're founder of, Chris?
Probably
it slipped my mind.
The Elevation Collective, was that?
The Elevation Collective. All of these words, elevation and evolutionary, that I'm having to deal with these days, get a bit confused. So, yeah, you're the founder of the Evolutionary Collective. So what I want to know is, where does an inspirational coach draw his own inspiration from?
Oh, wow. Well, I don't know whether I'd ever called myself an inspirational coach, but I think it is one component of my purpose. But I think I draw a lot of my inspiration from reading, but also from meeting amazing people. So I made just like you, Sandy, I made a decision a number of years ago that I wanted to mix with people that inspired me, that I could learn from and hopefully help me become a better human being. So that was one of my key reasons for starting my own radio show 11 and a half years ago. And so I've had the privilege of meeting and spending time with wonderful people like you. And that has inspired me to continuously step up and help people to elevate their life journeys and move their businesses and themselves forward in a very positive way. So yeah, so draw that inspiration, and I also probably intuitively draw inspiration from my sort of spiritual kind of interest too. Tapping into a wealth of people that maybe don't even exist today. I admire from reading about them, learning about them, and sometimes intuitively connecting with them.
I'm sure you get a lot of inspiration from the collective, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's start off talking about your books. First of all, what was it like for you having to choose just 10 books?
Oh wow, it was a real challenge, actually. Not because I realized if I could see the shelf next to me, there were so many on there, and thinking, oh, which ones do I pick? And then I think I slightly hadn't appreciated it was spiritual books initially when you mentioned it to me, and should have listened more intently. And then thought, crikey, it's 10 spiritual books. And then when I started to look through my bookcase and my thinking, it became harder to actually get down to 10. And it could have been 20, it could have been 30. So yeah, lots of wonderful wisdom out there to draw from.
Absolutely. I mean, what did we do before books?
I don't know, but I'll say one thing. I want to say thank you, and I'd encourage anybody who's listening to this to maybe go on their own journeys, as you've really inspired here, Sandy, to ask yourself, what are the books that inspire you? Because by thinking about that and the exercise you gave me, it was quite challenging, but what it did is it deepened my sense of spirituality and connected me with it even more. So I want to thank you for that, because it was special preparing for today.
So what do books mean to you in general? I mean, are you an avid book lover?
Well, I think I do like books very much, but also I do need a little bit of accountability when it comes to books. So the wonderful thing, like by having a radio show, by having some communities that I'm involved in, having being on quests like this one, it puts me into the situation where I need to read. So what I then do is, by having, and I suppose it links into my book, actually, that we referred to kindly earlier, in that when we act, sometimes we need a situation to do the heavy lifting. So for me, I'm not somebody who would read continuously unless there was a reason or I needed the inspiration. But when I do read a lot of books, so I can quite easily get sidetracked, and then I don't have to get back on the wagon again and read. And when I do, I benefit from it many times. But I'm in a situation with my work where I have to read, so that those situations mean that I read very regularly, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's interesting for me because when I'm talking to people like you, when I'm talking to guests, and on their list they have a book that I read many, many years ago, it takes me back, and I'm thinking, oh my God, yes, I might not even think about that book now. But when we're talking about it, I remember all the things that it did for me as well. So, I get to do this every week, which is great.
Then you can go away and you can read the ones that really inspire you, can't you?
Yeah. And, I mean, the first book on your list is one that actually reminded me of that. The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield, published in 1993. Now, I think I must have read that about the same time, when it first came out. And I'd completely forgotten. I think of it as one of those, oh yeah, that was one of the primers back before I started diving really deeply into the spiritual books. But actually, thinking about it now, it's a really important book for me too. So tell me what it meant to you.
Yeah. Well, I think what it did for me and meant for me was, I read it probably similar time to you, I think. So it was in the 1990s when it came out. And I think for the first time, I realized I love going for walks and I love being out in nature. And I love to travel as well, and visiting special places. And I have been to Machu Picchu in Peru and walked the Inca Trail, and possibly, I don't know, maybe that book actually inspired me to go and do that. Probably it may have been around the same time. But what really I took from the book was a sense and a realization that there is more going on than we may see on the surface. And you know what I took away that sense from the book of there being an aura around everything and an energy around everything. And I guess I'd subconsciously felt that as I walked through forests and woods and rainforests, and I'd been in the jungle and the Amazon and things like that. And I sensed that connectivity to nature, to Mother Nature. And the book talked about this aura around, and when I read the book, I started looking for that aura, and I kind of started to sense it. And you know, I feel that's around. You feel that aura around people, and I think you know, quantum physics would say that you know, this absolutely does exist. The book also, through this journey in Peru, it shared some self-development kind of principles. You know, the fact that life is on a journey, and it fitted in with the hero's journey, and then there were lots of helpful kind of self-development points to it. But I think it was that realization of this energy field, that we're connected to each other, to nature. There's a resonance, a vibration that I really picked up from that book, and I think I probably never quite saw life the same again.
You know, there's quite a few books that really are pivotal in this arena and have really influenced people greatly. But I think this one in particular is responsible for waking an awful lot of people up. You know, it's often the first one that they read, and they suddenly thought, "Oh my God," you know, and like you say, they suddenly became aware of energy and how one could use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we've talked before, that utilizing that energy is so powerful in the work that we do in being present and being present with people. And we feel that energy, like that connection I'm feeling with you now through Zoom, and we're a distance away. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. You feel this connection and can do with people when you're having a special conversation. And I think that book first made me aware that there was a lot more going on than I maybe realized, and it really got me very inquisitive.
Would you say it was one of the first spiritual books that you read?
Well, I'm trying to think now, because you say 1993, and I guess I was probably 20? Yeah, I would say it probably was. I mean, yeah, I would say it probably was one of the very first, actually. 93, 90. I'm just got to work out my dates now. Yeah, a lot happened to me in the 1990s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Yeah, a lot happened to me in the 1990s. It was a very important time of my life, actually, when I think I became awake to a lot. I did a course called the Landmark Forum, which changed everything for me as well at that time. And suddenly, I think, being a northern lad from a tough northern town in the north of England, my dad was a steel worker. These weren't the sort of things we talked about in Scunthorpe. It was going away to college, to university, and then realizing, once I started doing some self-development, that there was a journey to be had here, and I was on it, and I started to look into myself and my own behavior, and then my connection to other things, I guess. So that was one of the first. Good.
So the second book, and I don't know where this comes in your chronology of reading. I didn't ask you whether this list is in chronological order, but I don't think it is. The second book is The Awakened Brain, The New Science of Spirituality and Our Quest for an Inspired Life, by Lisa Miller, published relatively recently, just a year ago.
Yeah, so definitely not in order. This is one of the more recent books that I've read. And one of my show guests, I started to, inspired by you actually, Sandy, I started to ask my guests at the end what was a book that maybe changed their life and impacted them. And one of my guests said to me it was The Awakened Brain by Lisa Miller. And I have to say, I think it's an absolutely sensational read. I'd recommend it to anybody who's interested in the real, interested in, and a bit of the kind of the link between spiritualism and our brain. And Lisa was a psychologist, and she was helping people who were suffering with mental health issues. She was working with institutions, and the traditional approach had been to go back into the into the suffering, and to go back into the anguish of the situation that happened, maybe find that the turning point where somebody's health would deteriorate. And of course, if you do that, you're just going back all the time into the problem, into the issue, into the pain, into the pain, into the pain. And what she realized was that these people were just living the pain day in, day out through the treatment they were getting. And then she had a group of people who were Jewish, and I think one of them said, "What are we going to do for Hanukkah?" or something like that. And the response was, "We weren't doing anything." But she went away, and she thought, well, actually, we could do something. So she got a little group, and they started to talk. And suddenly, everybody who'd been very isolated started to have a conversation. And she realized that when people are collected to something of meaning, then their mental health improves. So she then managed to get some funding to look into this area, because psychologists were very skeptical about this. And she started to talk to eminent brain surgeons and people who understood the brain, and they started to do all sorts of studies, and started to realize that actually our mental health is so much better when we are linked into a sense of spirit or religion for some people. And for me, it's more this sense of spirit and a realization that we're connected to more than just ourselves. And they realized that actually our brain has been designed for this. So the two, there's an achievement awareness that where we focus in our brains naturally, or maybe on setting goals and a vision and moving towards something compelling. You might call that, elevating your a business. Elevating your future by setting goals, being very tangible. But our brains are also designed for spiritual thinking, connecting with something deeper, connecting with serendipity, realizing actually that there's maybe something below the surface, an unforeseen world that is helping us, guide us, and move us towards what we want. And during the journey, what is lovely is the way she opens up from not being deeply spiritual herself, but to realizing, having a number of different situations that happened to her in her life that were far, far beyond a sense of probability. She had situations that occurred around children. You need to read the book, because they couldn't initially have children. They've now got 3 that happened, which were quite remarkable. And she realized that actually her spirituality was awakened through the journey. So I recommended this to my collective, and someone the other day said this was one of the most brilliant books I've ever read. So if you've not read it, Lisa Miller, The Awakened Brain, it certainly impacted me and got me thinking about the harmony between spirit and setting goals and that sort of thing, and switching between the 2 modes in your brain, like a first and second gear or the car.
Book 3. This probably, I would say, would come out number 1 in all the books, that people have, and we've done over 100 shows now. The Power of Now, A Guide to Spiritual Enlightenment by Eckhart Tolle, 1997. What did it do for you?
Wow. Well, I think what it did for me was the realization that the most important time is right now. And I think the importance of making every now count. So often we spend our time, we can be thinking about the future, what we're going to do tomorrow. You might be thinking right now about your tea or your dinner or your lunch. You might be thinking about a conversation or going to a bar or something you're going to do this evening, or a piece of work. Or you could be thinking about the past and situations that happened in the past. So you could be, the other thing people think about is they think about when they're having a conversation, often, do they like me or do I like them? But what they're not doing is they're not in that special moment where the magic happens, which is right now. This is the time that we can affect right now and be at our best. And I think what I took from the book was that if I made every now as special as I could, every interaction as special as I could, then perhaps the impact that I could have and the life experience I could have would be better. Now, I think that works really well in sort of coaching conversations and conversations like this. It's, when you're present. So I would encourage people, maybe, every time you go into a conversation, you walk through a threshold into a different room, You sit down with your spouse or your children, that you relish in that moment of now and be with them. And I think that's what I really took out of this book. It is a magical space to be fully present.
And everything in our society today is actually taking us away from that. You know, it's giving us all these little sound bites and these constant distractions, you know, from this to this to this to this, taking us, you know, we don't rest in the now anymore.
No, and I think we have to make a conscious effort to do so. I've certainly pulled back a lot from social media over the last, since the pandemic, really. And I think, you know, I think that has been really helpful, because you can spend so, and I'm very careful with the news. I listen to it very sparingly. It's designed to get to us, to attract our attention. It's not always it's not a full reflection of truly what's going on in this world. The world actually is a kinder place than we do realize it, a lot of it. But I think what we have to try and do is just pull into the now, and spend our time there, enjoy each moment. We don't know how long we're going to be here for. None of us do. It's for all of our lives are fleeting, when you think about the length of history. So be present for people right now. Enjoy the moment. You're here right now. This is our moment.
This is the moment, absolutely. So book number 4 is The Power of Decision by Raymond Charles Barker, 1968. That one.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's one that's come up for you before.
Never.
No. I read this one. I read this one 15 years ago, and he was he set up some kind of a spiritual movement. He was born in I think it was about 1911, something like that, and he wrote this book, as you say, in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that sort of time, and it's full of his work is full of a lot of wisdom, and there's some great kind of quotes through his work. But there's one thing that really intrigued me in his power of decision, and of course the power of decision, being prepared to make a decision, is really important to moving forward. And if we don't make a decision, that's a decision too, but it might have an adverse effect. But what I really took away in that decision-making process was something where he said that ideas are seeking a home as much as you're seeking them. And if you have an idea, it may just be that idea came to you because it was felt that you were a perfect home for it. And sometimes we might have these ideas and we might think they're crazy. We feel insecure inside, and all this noise happens in our head which says, actually, I'm not good enough. I couldn't do this. This is too significant. Haven't got the money to do it, etc., etc. But perhaps the idea came to you because it was looking for the perfect home, and perhaps you're the perfect home for it. Now, that idea might be, the book would suggest that idea might actually also be going to other potential homes, because it's looking for, you know, a place to embed and a place to develop and grow it. But it might just be that the idea came to you for a reason, and it came to you because it thought you were the person who could do it. So it could be that you're doing a disservice to the world by not following it through.
Yes, that's such a good point. You know, I, some years ago, kind of got the idea that ideas are like, you know, a conveyor belt, and there they are passing in front of us. And it's, you know, do you want me? Do you want me? Do you want me? And lots of people may reach up, grab it. I mean, we always hear about people who suddenly had the idea to do a piece of research on something obscure, and there's one on one side of the world and one on the other, and, you know, they're all doing it at the same time. So that's what I thought about ideas. And once I realized that, then I became very careful, because, you know, there are ideas that drop in, and then you go, no, I really don't want to do that. And then you realize, I think that one is meant for me to do.
Yeah.
And now you've got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it may be bigger than you.
Yes. Yeah.
And
so which idea that's bigger than you have you followed?
It's a good one. I think this community, the collective that I'm creating, I think that is bigger than me. And I had this idea that after 11 and a half years of my show, I'd met so many wonderful people. What would happen if you brought them together? And I have to be honest, I was quite nervous about doing that. But what I've found when I brought some of these people together, and a community is being created. These are, best-selling authors, very successful entrepreneurs, thought leaders. Is that actually something very special happens, and they're looking for a home too. Actually, they're looking for a place to meet where they feel safe, because they're out there doing big things in the world, or they have the potential to do big things. And so I felt drawn to this idea. I've been wondering how I best utilize and add the most value through the interviews I've done over the years, because I hadn't tried to monetize them. I've not tried to make revenue from them. For me, it was very philanthropical. However, I thought actually this idea came to me that I'm doing a disservice if I don't connect some of these people, because what could happen by some of them meeting? What initiatives could happen?
Exactly.
How, how could the world be improved? And we need to bring smart people together. So I think that was an idea, and it's starting to take form. And there are collectives with members within them, and a community is starting to form. And the feedback is that it's something really, really special. And the surprise to me, I guess, is that I meet all these wonderful people over the years, and maybe my own insecurity that am I the right person to host this? What will they think of me? But actually, they see me as essential to it, which is quite, feels quite remarkable. But it's meaning I've got to step up and grow, because these aren't easy meetings to facilitate. These are quite in-depth, deep, special conversations with very smart people. So yeah, that's something which is emerging. The show itself, like you doing this, it takes a little bit of bravery to start a show initially and interview people and ask them. And people might think you're a bit crazy when you start doing it. And you've done this for many, many years and are brilliant at it. And I'm probably 11 and a half years for me. That took a little bit of, but once you get going, it just becomes a natural part of what you do, really.
Yeah. I just think it's amazing how people get ideas and think immediately, I can't possibly do that. And it's hard. It is hard. But I think you have to take away that tea and say, I can do that. What have you got to lose?
Yeah. And it can be also, I think it takes bravery sometimes to hear an idea about how you can improve yourself and be brave enough to take it on. I had a lovely, I'll share, I had a lovely, I was with a client yesterday, and we had done some work around her, this chatter in her mind, and she pulled herself down a lot, and she had a lot of negative language. And so we've worked on this for a little while. And she told me yesterday, she said, Chris, she said, a few weeks ago, I was thinking about you, and I was putting into practice what you'd said about reframing my mind as I watched my house burn down. I was looking at all the positives that were coming through, and I just thought, just good on you. You I didn't expect you to utilize that in that scenario, but she was there, more grounded, more centered, because she'd been brave enough to take the feedback that I'd given and a strategy to do it, and she'd done it, and she'd utilized it in the most difficult of times. So that's brave as well, taking on lessons and learnings from books, following them through to better yourself.
Reframing is a powerful thing, and more of us should learn how to do it. Open up that tunnel vision and look on either side. So let's move on to book 5, which in a way kind of follows naturally on from this, Falling Upward, a spirituality for the two halves of life by Richard Rohr, 2011.
In front of me, actually. There you go. Falling Upward. Yeah. So this book kind of hit me at a really good time in my life, because I had a couple of major surgeries on my stomach earlier in the year, and I actually nearly died. from the first one. It went wrong. Both of them actually went wrong, but I lived to tell the tale. And I think what so I kind of fell over from being very fit and very healthy, and I used to do endurance a few years ago. I was doing major endurance events and things like that, to having to look at my own fragility and realize that maybe I needed to realize that my health wasn't great. And I think what I really took from this is that when you fall down, those are the moments where you look, you learn, and they help you on the up. And in reading that book, but other thinking, I realized how important all the self-development I'd done over the years, because actually I was able to reframe what happened to me in very positive ways. And I realized that actually there were blessings in it, that I appreciated life even more because I got through this situation. That actually I've got people who gone through far worse than I have, actually, and therefore I had gratitude towards them. And I actually went through the experience with only probably having a couple of hours of feeling down in 6 months of life challenge. And I think what the book really talks about, Richard he's a religious fellow. I think he's a priest in America and works in prisons. I'm not. I don't have a religious background, but what I really took out was the importance of these falling down for your spiritual growth, and how when you fall down, you step up, and also the two halves, the halves of life. So my collective appeals really to people in the second half of their life, because in the first half, people are focused on the outside of the vessel. So they're focused on, earning enough money, and then, having a car, having a better car, having a house, having a better house, getting the mortgage paid off, those kind of things, maybe status symbols, etc. But when we fall down and we have situations like I had this year, you realize that what's inside is far more important. Kindness, humility, contribution to others, not self-pity, wisdom. So I think the reading spiritual books do as well. They help you stay in touch with the inside of the vessel and what's truly important, not the outside, because you can't take millions and millions of pounds away or dollars away with you. I did courses years ago with all the sort of American gurus, and it was, do you want 5 million, 10 million, 20 million? At the end of the day, it's about being the best human being you can be. And whether you have all of that money or you don't, it won't make a difference probably to how many people turn up at your funeral one day.
Yeah.
And how much good you've done. Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a short break now. So when we come back, we're going to talk about my big toe. But not my big toe.
Your big toe? Are you going to demonstrate?
Not my big toe. Whose big toe? Stay tuned and you'll find out. We'll be back in a few moments.
Om Times TV.
Maya Angelou once said that there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and when I'm not hosting Om Times Media's flagship radio show What Is Going On and the No BS Spiritual Book Club, I help people share their untold stories. Books are my life, my joy and my passion, and there is no greater reward than helping aspiring writers get their books out of their heads and into the hands of those who are waiting to read them. If you feel that you have a book in you but don't know where to begin, visit sedgbeer.com, click on the Work With Me tab and find out how my experience helping others tell their stories might be just what you've been looking for. That's sedgbeer.com, sedgbeer.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back, Chris Cooper. Let's talk about My Big Toe.
Yeah. So My Big Toe, that's My Big Toe, and it's a big book as well, the complete trilogy.
Big tome.
Thomas Campbell, and I think I probably got about that far through it. So I can see on here, but I've not. I have to be honest. I've not read the full book, and the reason being is I think you probably need a medal or some kind of Oscar, I think, to get all the way through it. But I have had the privilege of interviewing Thomas on several occasions, and Thomas is was a NASA physicist. He also spent 40 years as a physicist investigating consciousness, and did all sorts of laboratory tests on all sorts of things, telepathy and all sorts of things. And I just found him an incredibly fascinating man. And he's a man. The book is, some of it is quite downloaded, some of it is very scientific in its nature. But what I really got from my conversations with Thomas and the book is just a real sense of this non-physical world and where we meet it. And I think I also this week is 4 years ago since my father passed. So it was about 4 years ago when I was doing these interviews with Thomas, I think, and 4 years ago, and it helped me to feel more connected still with my father, and I think probably look out even more for the serendipity, for the awareness that of things that happen, that give you clues that there is much more going on. When my father, I got the news that my dad was terminally ill, I went and sat on a hill on a bench with my wife and looked up, and there was a circular rainbow above our heads, and which was just made me just think, well, actually that was strange, but is that a sign that things are going to be okay? And then I remember my father sat 4 days with him as he was passing from pancreatic cancer, and was with him, and I felt this as he passed. I felt this enormous sense of peace in the room. I mean, just the atmosphere just completely and utterly shifted. It was quite beautiful. So I picked up that maybe his spirit had gone to a better place. And then when I sprinkled his ashes at a beautiful spot by a lake, I climbed under some trees to do it, and suddenly the wind blew and I got a load of his ashes on my face, and I think he was trying to tell me, I'm still with you, and I think from my conversations with Thomas, it got me to realize that there is much more going on with around quantum physics. And he talks about in the book, one of the things that struck me was how maybe 15 years ago or so, when he was writing it, he said, if we don't look after this planet, Mother Nature will seek its revenge. And he was absolutely right. So yeah, I would say that My Big Toe and Thomas Campbell just opened me up to thinking through all of the different serendipitous situations that had happened through my life. And now what I do is I look in every conversation, I realize there's a reason, the probability of us being here right now with that person are in that situation is actually really quite slim. So perhaps there's a reason behind it. So I look for the reason behind it. And I realized that there is this non-physical world that I don't see. Sometimes I get glimpses and connections with it, but you can have a relationship with it still.
My Big Toe is a trilogy, isn't it? And the first book is Awakening. Is that book you've got there just one book, or is it the trilogy?
It's the trilogy, so that's all. That's all three in one.
Hence the size.
And I think he actually wrote the trilogy in one go. Actually, I may have to go. I mean,
What a task!
It is incredible. I mean, I look at the book now. I'm looking now, and it is. I've written all over it. There's just it's underlined all over in the book with amazing kind of quotes and wisdom and reflections. I must go through and finish it, but I don't think there's any. I should be ashamed that I didn't, because it goes deeply into philosophy, physics, and metaphysics, and it's not light entertainment. It's not light read, but it is a special works.
Yeah.
With lots of wisdom and lots of insight from it that I think you could probably spend your lifetime studying, actually.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, Sandy. I find sometimes when I go back and read a book at a later date, maybe my consciousness has shifted and I see new things in it.
Yes.
But sometimes there's a time for a book when it's right.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've done that. I've picked up a book, tossed it aside and said rubbish, and then refound it a few years later. This is the best thing ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So book number 7, Humankind, A Hopeful History, Rutger Bregman, published in 2019.
Oh, what a book. What a book. I was sent this by Nick Haynes, who's a good friend of mine, and is originally his background was Chinese medicine, but he's a kindness expert. He's created something called the 5 Institute and a methodology. Lovely, lovely man. And he after I interviewed him on my show last, he sent, maybe before actually, he sent me that book as a gift. And I love that when people do a little gesture. You put a lot into these things, and little gesture that he did that was beautiful. But he did it for a reason, because he knew that I really cared about kindness too. And it's so easy to get disillusioned in this world that actually it isn't a kind place. You believe the media, you look at what's going on in parts of the world like Ukraine and politics, and you can easily get down on the world and down on people. And I hear only someone this week someone was giving an argument that people just aren't kind, etc. But actually we were kind of born kind, really. We may be in our communities, we can become very protective of our communities that we belong, and because we like to be together. When we were like kind of puppies, we love to be, like mine do, I love to play together and be together, but we can get quite competitive and with other cultures. But what the book does, it really goes through the whole history of and explains why actually we are kinder, and how we might get misguided by the likes of the media and government and politics, and I think what I've realized from all of my shows and all the conversations I've had over the last few years is that we have to be really, really careful to not allow people to hijack our subconscious minds. We can easily go down conspiracy theory lines, and video is very powerful today, and communication can be very powerful, and we sometimes may find ourselves doing that because we meet a community of people that we like. But just take real care to make sure that we really do seek the truth. And I think Rutger's book, he's a very young man. It surprises me somebody can be so smart in his 30s to write a book with that level of research in it. But it is a special read, and it's an important read. But anybody who deals with people, I think, and cares about people, and hopefully you'll come out of it with a greater sense of humanity and connection to humanity, and take a little bit more care of what you're exposed to.
And all the research shows that kindness, generosity, volunteering, people who undertake that as a way of life live longer and are healthier.
Yeah, Absolutely. You get that lovely warm glow maybe when you've helped somebody who needed it. It doesn't hurt to go through life being as kind as you possibly can, and as caring. And we all have a duty, I think, to try and rebalance the world at the moment. And we talked there about reframing our thoughts. If we get negative, about being kind to, at the end of the day, most people, they just want to have a roof over their head. They want to be comfortable. They want to have friends. They want to get on with their neighbors. Maybe they like to have a holiday. They want to connect with others. They don't want all this trouble and strife. And wherever I've been in the world, I've met lovely, beautiful people. Sometimes the regimes aren't nice that control them, but there's lovely, beautiful people, and most people want a simple life and want to get on.
Yeah. How true. So, book number 8, The Beautiful Business, an actionable manifesto to create an unignorable business with love at the core.
Oh yes.
By Stephen Morris, 2021. What a lovely premise.
Stephen is a lovely friend. I'm very honoured. He's part of my community. He's a lovely man. He's an artist as well as based in San Diego. He's an artist as well as a very successful business person with a background in kind of marketing and strategy. And the thing I love about Stephen Morris, and I should also mention Libby Wagner as well, who's a close friend of Stephen and ours, and is also part of my community. She's a poet. But what Stephen and Libby both possess is a real artistry, an artistry around language. And I think what Stephen beautifully articulates in this book is that business can be beautiful, and we can create a beautiful business. We can be kind to each other. It can be based on love and caring. And he also puts in the book his photographs that he's taken and some of his artwork as well. But the book is almost quite meditative, and he's a deep man. He's a spiritual man, but he brings a level of beauty to language that sometimes leaves me slightly out of breath. It's special, and his book does that as well. And I was talking actually to another good friend, Wendy Keller, Keller Media, who's a very successful book agent in the US, and just by serendipity, she said, "I've just got to order a new book today." She said, "I'm just reading a book called The Beautiful Business," and I said to Wendy, I said, "Well, it's by my good friend Stephen Morris. She said, it's doing really, really well, this book. People are really connecting with it." And I think that's also encouraging when you hear that, because it means people are connecting with kindness. They are connecting with love. They are realizing that business is the way forward. Business can be the solution. It should be the solution, not the problem, to some of the issues we have around in the world. We just need to change our thinking. And I think Stephen's work helps us to do that. So yeah, he's a great man. It's a great book.
Number 9, The Essential Rumi, Coleman Banks, published in 1293. So it's an old book, but I don't have a date for when this particular translation was done.
Yeah. So I would recommend. I'm not recommending necessarily this book. It was just the first Rumi one I had to talk about Rumi on this show, and it was the first one I pulled off my shelf, and it had got some poems that had not been printed very frequently in this one. But I would recommend just investigating Rumi. I think he was certainly some years he's been the most purchased poet in the US, even though he was in the 1200s. And I was invited. I interviewed a guy, a lovely man from the Middle East, Dr. Mansour Malik, who created the International Diplomatic Business Club, and which had 3,000 members, diplomats, members of royal households and families, and senior business people, which he brought together. And he invited me on. It was I interviewed him, and he talked a lot about love. He's quite a very deep man and spiritual and religious man, and not normally somebody that I would typically befriend. But he for some reason he saw something in me, and we did this interview. And I had so many comments from people around the world. And he said to me, when I'm in the UK, can I meet you? And we met. And he took me to the Ritz for lunch, I think it was, which was really, really kind of him. But he said, would you consider coming out to Turkey? Because I'd like to take you and I'd love you to experience the whirling dervishes, because I love Rumi. And I think it'd be very interesting for you if you came. And he invited me with only 3 weeks to go before Christmas. And it was the week before Christmas. So I had only 2 weeks to get organized and go. And I've had lots of opportunities to do things in the past, and I've not taken them up. And I thought, should I go? I don't know this guy. Should I really go to the Middle East, to go to Turkey to meet him the week before Christmas? Will I get home okay? And all this went through my brain, but intuitively I checked in, and it was very clear I needed to go. So there I was. I turned up in Konya in Turkey, and Mansour is the most amazing man. I mean, he's like the Pied Piper of Hamelin. He has a presence that just pulls people in. He has an energy that just pulls people in the streets to him, and often he would then go and take them out for dinner. It was just remarkable. And we visited Rumi's shrine. We visited the whirling dervish. We watched his annual event in Konya in Turkey, where the whirling dervishes perform every year. It's live on TV. The whirling dervishes are on the Turkish currency. The head of the whirling dervishes is revered. And we got to sit and watch the whirling dervishes. The following day, I interviewed the head of the whirling dervishes. I met a member of who was of the Rumi bloodline, who runs the Mevlana Foundation, which is the foundation around the works of Rumi in Konya. And I met a wonderful hotelier who runs his hotels based upon the principles of Rumi. It's a time for me. Can I just read a poem?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm just going to read this to you, and for linking with my stay in Konya, and I'll explain what happened. Now, this poem, the lines from this poem are actually written on the staff doors of this particular hotel. It's in Konya in Turkey, and they very much run their hotel on the principles of Rumi. And it goes, in compassion and grace, be like the sun. In concealing others' faults, be like the night. In generosity and helping others, be like a river. In anger and fury, be like the dead. In modesty and humility, be like the earth. In tolerance, be like the sea. Either appear as you are, or be as you appear. And that poem, when I left, so my plane, it was a week before Christmas, and I was looking, and there was thick fog in Konya, and the planes were delayed for 2 days in the end. I could have missed Christmas and getting home to my family. But because in generosity and helping others, be like a river was one of their mantras. They said to me, look, your plane's delayed. We'd love you to have an a la carte meal on us, and we'll give you all the help we can to rearrange your tickets. And it was frequently, my tickets were changing all the time. It was all in Turkish. So they were helping me. And when I left, I'd stayed 2 extra nights and they wouldn't let me pay for them.
Wow.
Would I recommend people go to that hotel in Konya? And I'm regretting greatly. I can't remember the name of it right now. It was a Novotel, actually. It was a Novotel, believe it or not. And I had the most amazing experience with Rumi. There's another one I love. Your body is away from me, but there's a window open from my heart to yours. And I thought about that when my dad passed.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm still connected. There's still a window from my heart to my dad's, and I connect in with that. We're still together even though we're apart.
Yeah.
And I go for walks sometimes, and I talk to him in my head. Still, we're still connected, even though he's passed. So there's some wonderful work in Rumi. So I just want to talk about Rumi.
Yeah, well, you're not the only one who likes to talk about him and read him and quote him and live.
And all the denominations of the religions, they all loved him. There was no, he was all not divisive in any way, not very collective.
So, your final book, number 10, Fearless at Work, Timeless Teachings for Awakening Confidence, Resilience, and Creativity in the Face of Life's Demands by Michael Carroll, published in 2012.
Yeah. I also have had the privilege to get to know Michael, and I've interviewed him a couple of times. And he's a former Disney vice president, but had a real and worked for things like Simon and Schuster and companies like that. But when he left Disney and Schuster, he wanted to follow his interest in Buddhism, and therefore he's been a Buddhist teacher ever since. But what he's done is combined what he's learned from his Buddhist practices with tangible business, and what he's done, he's kind of translated. It's talks about, and this is Fearless at Work. Lovely picture there with an elephant. Timeless teachings for awakening confidence, resilience, and creativity in the face of life's demands. And I really found in here there's some really good lessons in here. I've read so much about business. I read about business. I talk about business all the time. But there were some new, ideas that came out of this book that that probably deepened my, my thinking around business and the importance of mindfulness within it. One of the things I took away was from the book was just always being prepared to lean into difficult situations and not let them manifest. I think that was so easy, isn't it? When there's something awkward, there's an elephant in the room, it's difficult. But by leaning into those situations, we can stop them getting far worse.
Yeah.
These situations can result in, major bust-ups, businesses collapsing if you don't lean into them. So just having that ability in a kind way to lean into those problems and resolve them, even though it might feel hard, it generally results in a much easier life and greater happiness and success. So I think one of the ideas that I took from this was always to lean in, which does actually mean that my customers often get me to lean into their elephants for them. Which is, I've got one tomorrow. What challenge that the issues they can't quite face dealing with in their companies themselves. But I do that with, I'll do that with grace and humility and presence, and usually in intuition, and usually we get out of those situations with a very positive outcome.
Yeah, indeed. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, business books can be every bit as spiritual, as, a religious book or an ancient text, every bit.
Absolutely. There's timeless wisdom. I mean, we've been trading with each other for rather a long time, and we've been drawing on influences because it's not easy, is it? And
No.
my work, I deal with people. For me, developing leaders and teams and cultures, and it can be a messy business when it comes to people. You need to draw on all sorts of wisdom. That's what I love about these books. Actually, I love the timeless wisdom, and which can actually make you more effective. And I'm fascinated to get older with the concept of wisdom, actually, about being a wise soul. And I think it is a combination of what you read, what you learn, a combination of who you're being, your presence, your kindness, your authenticity, your integrity.
Yeah.
And when I meet people who I think are truly wise souls, they usually combine a lot of lack of judgment, a lot of these qualities, but then they're drawing on all sorts of sources to help bring positive solution.
Yeah. Well, that's your 10 best list. Now let's talk about you. Usually I ask everybody, well, I always ask everybody to give me some keywords, some descriptors, some ways of describing themselves aside from the usual biographical CV things. I don't often read them out, but these do give us a nice insight into the person, particularly when they give me the keywords, that only their family or their loved ones would know about them. Nice Chris. Nice
Yeah.
Chris. What is Nice Chris? Who is Nice Chris?
So I don't know whether that sounds. I don't want that to sound conceited in any way. It's actually there's a point of amusement with it, because I guess I was somebody who tended to be, as a young person, someone who, when friends took me home, their mums tended to quite like me, because I was always quite nice and I was kind and I was grateful. But I always remember when I went to college, a guy called Mark, who became my best man when I got married. Mark would really get quite annoyed, nice Chris, nice, because people would tend to like Chris. I tend to get on. I had this sort of way of not being the center of attention, but just going around being pleasant and not mindful, I guess, with the way that I treat people, and it became a joke. It became almost like an irritant to my friend, because it talked to someone else. Oh yeah, Chris, he's really nice, and it's just so annoying. So when you asked me to come up with something that was a bit different,
That's what you came up with.
I've got one of my collective, and she told my wife, actually, again, this sounds very conceited, but she said, you haven't got Hollywood good looks, but you are the housewife's choice. That's what she always describes me. Every time she speaks to me, she said, you're the housewife's choice.
I guess there's something in that.
I don't know. So I'm embarrassing myself now.
So tell me about, you contributed to the multiple international bestseller, Play the Game. Tell me about that.
Yeah, this was a book created by a guy called Adam Strong, who's an entrepreneur based in Cyprus. I believe he was also Mo Farah, the runner's running partner. And he asked me if I was interested in contributing to a book with 17 leaders sharing their thoughts and their best ideas, really, in a chapter. And I was intrigued to see how this would work. Also intrigued to see if it was something that I might do with my community at some point. And I wrote a chapter in it called Elevating Leadership for a Better World. And because that's something that I think is really important, the elevation of leadership, leaders become better. So, and the book, I think one of the smart things about the book, of course, when you've got 17 people who are well connected, and you've got an 18 to brings it together, you can between you tell a lot of people about it. So it did quite well as a result of that. A lot of people being able to share it and let their networks know about it. But it was nice to collaborate on a book. I met some interesting folk through it, and I had an opportunity to write about something that I thought was truly important. Leadership does need to step up. It does need to become more aware. It needs to become more mindful. It needs to become more aware of the environment. It needs to be more aware of people and kindness. And I think the time we're on a burning platform right now, quite literally. In the summer, there were fires only 6 or 7 miles from my home, which in the UK, which we never normally have here. We are on a burning platform. We need to do things better, differently. We've had the pandemic, we've hybrid working, all sorts of things going on, and I think we've all got to step up. So I share a few ideas and a blueprint that I developed with a guy called Gene Early, who actually developed NLP, set up the NLP training centers in Europe, and built a genomic research firm, and is a very fascinating man. So we came up with some principles that we thought were important to elevate leadership today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you also referred earlier to the ill health you've had and the sports that you used to do. And one of the things that you did was one of the toughest endurance events in Scotland to raise funds for Mary's Meals and Mercy Corps. Tell me about Mary's Meals and the Mercy Corps.
Yeah, so they came part and parcel of doing the event, actually. In the event created by David Fox Pitt MBE. And David is an amazing man and a friend who's raised £40 million for charity. So he puts on each year, he puts on a quadrathlon. He puts on a number of endurance events in Scotland, and we've had the privilege of getting to know them as a family and spending time with them. And he actually came up with the idea with his friend Bear Grylls and another friend of mine, Neil Lawton, who's a well-known adventurer, and they created this event with the aim of raising money for Mercy Corps, which it is disaster relief, and Mary's Meals, that aim to provide meals for children who wouldn't get a school meal or go to school. Actually, if they could, they realize, all these poor children who end up out there picking through litter and things like that in India and Africa. One of the reasons they don't go to school is because they're not earning anything for food. So if you could provide food and pencils and things like that at school, then you could get meals. So yeah. I went to Scotland to Loch Tay. We stayed with David. And I remember the first trip, he showed me a BBC documentary on his event and the Artemis Great Kindrochit Quadrathlon. And it requires you to swim a mile across Loch Tay, which is 158 meters deep, freezing cold at dawn. And then you go over 7 Munros, which are all mountains over 1,000 meters, 15 miles, 7-mile kayak, and then a 36-mile hilly bike ride, all in a day. And something just started to just eat away at my brain afterwards, and thinking, could I do it? And my wife said it was a midlife crisis, and I remember my mother saying I was mad, but it just wouldn't go away. And then I decided to do it. I couldn't swim front crawl, so I had to learn. I had 9 months to learn how to swim front crawl. And I sat at David's house. I remember he sat me next to somebody who'd done the event 3 years ago before and came third. And I asked him, I said, what's your single best bit of advice you could give me? And he said, Chris, he said, it's this. If you train consistently and hard several times a week between now and July, which is 9 months ago, it'll be the best day of your life. If you don't, it'll be the worst. So I did that, and we I think as a consequence you have to do it in a pair for safety. So I did it with my friend Mike Pagan, who was a great swimmer and helped me learn to swim. We I think 150 children gained a free school meal for a year, and the other 50% of the money went to Mercy Corps for disaster relief. So that was great, and hopefully I'll be up to doing something like it again. Maybe I think I've injured my feet too much from it to run, but I'm sure I can get on my bike or swim and do another challenge in a next year maybe, or the following. Oh, Sandy. I'm not sure where Sandy's gone. Okay, so Sandy has apparently had a broadband issue. So we've come to me. So you've just got me. Oh no, she's back. Brilliant.
I'm back. So clearly it was my end. I thought it might be your end. So where did we lose you? I was just about to ask you what you're reading now, and presumably it's not My Big Toe.
Oh, good. Crikey me. What am I reading? I've got a list. I've got a pile of books at the moment. I have a book called An Officer and a Gentleman by Mandy Hickson, who's a fighter pilot, because I'm interviewing in a couple of weeks. I'm also reading Sacred Nature by Karen Armstrong, which is spiritual.
Yes.
I've also have on the go Deep Heart by John Prendergast, which, that's really, have you got minutes to just talk about that one? Something that happened to me. Yeah. So I was reading Deep Heart, and I had an idea from it to spend a day making decisions through my chest area, through my heart area, rather than my head, from a kind of loving place. And I have 2 children who are 12 and 16, and the 16-year-old has a girlfriend. And I took the 3 of them. My wife didn't come because we just got a puppy, to Alton Towers, which is a theme park in the United Kingdom, a very popular one. And I this could have been a bit of a disaster, because I'm still getting my health a bit around. I feel a bit nauseous because I've had this chest issue, and we're going on all these theme park rides. But I decided that I would make my decision purely through my heart that day and just go with the flow. And the theme park that day, for some reason, was open for 12 hours, which is a lot longer than usual. So we get there at 9 in the morning. We're there till 9 at night. And I just went. I didn't worry about the cost of food or what it was costing me. I didn't. I spent my time in the now. And my youngest son, who doesn't particularly like to hug you because he doesn't like to feel your bones. It's a young 12-year-old sort of thing. Spent probably 25% of the day with his arm around me, and we just had the most wonderful, loving, kind day together. And we didn't have a single squabble, fallout. It was just a delight, actually, and I put that down to getting this out of the way and just trying to do my best to stay in there all the time, and that came from the deep heart.
And the mirroring, what's going on around us is a mirror of what's going on within us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a lovely example to share. Thank you for sharing that. So one last question. This is something that I'm doing for another research project. When you look at the world today, we all know what's happening in the world today. What would it take to secure the future of your children and your grandchildren?
Whoa. That's a big question.
Your opinion.
What would it take? Oh, my word, I'm going all over the place in my mind with where this conversation could go. I think it requires leadership to step up. It requires people to come together rather than allow themselves to be pulled apart. It comes down to looking at what is truly important: kindness, love, connection, authenticity. It comes to being a positive agent for change and being prepared to stand up for your convictions, but being aware of some of the consequences. It comes down individually to watching the way that you behave when it comes to your own, your recycling, your use of fossil fuels, what you eat and consume on a personal level, but also on a business perspective. I think it's important that we and in my field, when it's just a lot of coaching and working with organizations, it's being a bit more assertive with getting onto the agendas what's truly important right now. So, coaching used to always be about asking questions. Well, I'm much more active than that now. I'm a kind of a mentor to people too, but I will guide them, and I'll guide them to a better world and a better company and making a contribution. So I think it's all about doing our bit. It's about using our time well. It's not ensuring we're not getting drawn into cynicism and negativity and anger and rage and frustration, but keeping ourselves in a positive mental state, and each day working towards a better world through our own work. I think is important. And there's more I could say and talk. I worries me about some of the people that get into power.
Yeah.
And their lack of humility, their lack of conscience, actually. But maybe we need to raise our conscience to attract the right leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Chris. Well said. Chris Cooper, thank you for adding your 10 best list to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's library of recommendations. Before we close, will you please share where people can get in touch with you or learn more about you?
Yes, sure. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, is a good place to connect with myself. We have a website. It's going to get completely revamped soon, which is chriscooper.co.uk. You can connect with me. I don't mind people if you want to email me. It's chris@chriscooper.co.uk. Please don't send me spam and junk, but please do. And if you want to connect with me on, say, LinkedIn, could you let me know where you heard from, this from, from the show with Sandy? Because I get so many requests from people just to connect in LinkedIn. I don't connect, but when I hear from where the source came from and why you're connected with me, I'm always happy to do that. So I think, yeah, and do my show is the Business Elevation Show. It's on Voice America. Just Google Business Elevation Show, and there's nearly 500 episodes in there of content. But Sandy, I want to say, I want to say full respect to you and thank you so much for inviting me today. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and it's inspired me. Having to think through these books has taken me on a journey to deepen my connections with spirituality. You're a great person, and I just want to acknowledge you and send lots of love to all those people who listen to this, and just go out there and do your bit, be present in the now, keep yourself positive, reframe your mindset, and look in your sphere of work how you can contribute to a better world through your work, and don't get dragged into the negativity. Avoid the news, the negativity of the news. Keep yourself up there, manage your own mental health, live a great life, and inspire your kids and those around you.
Very well said, Chris. Thank you so much for that. Well, that's it for this week. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer. I'll be back at the same time next week with another edition of the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live interview series. Till then, it's goodbye from me, and thank you to Chris Cooper.